it is just about time now for the world famous predictions. There's an actual real piece of music with a genuine title. We'll start with the Championship ones. Do we want to do League One or?
Words from the bottom.
Let's go through League One, and in the semi-finals we start at some point on Sunday. Oldham Ruffians versus just Doncaster.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, great finish for Doncaster, wasn't it, up at Newcastle? Nobody would have thought that whatsoever, but Oldham with a week off, and Scott Naylor saying he wants to put all the way he want to be before he leaves. You know, he's had 7 great years from there, and it just hasn't got him over the line for that championship. So this will be a massive test for Doncaster. You know, but he gets a tune out and does Horney over at Hull from there. So big test for Oldham, but I just think Oldham. I'll have a little bit too much quality, and I'll go Oldham by 10.
I think you're right. I think at this stage of what has been a gruelling season, a week off is particularly valuable. Doncaster have been in one cup final, and it's elimination up, all the way. I don't know that they can get up again. I think Oldham have been underestimated this year. We've talked about maybe Newcastle will go up, maybe Huntsville will have a good season, but Oldham have just hung in there. I'll go Oldham by 6.
I don't know about either team, so it's going to go Oldham because they're at home and they finish above them in the table. 6 points above them, so I'm going to go for Oldham as well. And the winners of that will play the winner of the second semi-final, which is not on the Our League app. That is Newcastle Thunder, who come in off that defeat against Doncaster, against the Workington town side, who went to Hunslet and won.
Well, Foreman, when he took over Workington, one thing what he said, he wanted consistency in performances, like every coach wants to go to it, and he's getting it. And I say for Workington to go to Hunslet and turn Hunslet over from there was a magnificent victory. Surprise loss for Newcastle, so he'll want the reaction more. Is it Finnegan, isn't it, Newcastle now?
Dennis Betts.
And they'll want the reaction. And is this maybe a game too far for Workington? Well, speaking to one of the directors yesterday, no, it's not. They're looking forward to it, and they like being on the road. They like playing away from home, to be honest with you, from there. So this will be a big test for Newcastle. They've got big ambitions, haven't they? But I just feel as though that surprise loss to Doncaster, maybe just a bit of a kick up the backside, what they required. Maybe a game too far for Workington, but I don't think there'll be much in it. But I'll just go the Thunder. I'll go the Thunder by 7.
I'm with you. I think if Newcastle had any pretensions that these playoffs are going to be easy, they got that knocked out of them this week. I think that they'll be working overtime this week to make sure the same thing doesn't happen. They've earned the right to be at home. They need to make that count. I think they'll win. I think they'll win by 16.
And I'm just going to go with Newcastle as well. It's going to be an interesting one, though, that isn't it? Because Newcastle have obviously spent big. They're kind of like the League One version of Lee, although one might say slightly more sustainable. I don't know, but it would be good for the sport if they were in a higher division, which is not necessarily a reason to tip a team. I'm going to go for Newcastle anyway. But what a great job Chris Thornton's done, having left his role at Huddersfield last year. With Workington. I'm sure they'll go on to more success in 2020. And the Championship will start on Sunday with the big game on the telly. Winners go straight through to the final. It's Toronto versus Toulouse.
Yeah, well, I don't want to say too much because I don't really like watching Toronto. I think they just have too much quality, even though Toulouse had a good side. Saville will do them. I'll just go the Wolfpack by 14. Not bothered really about the Wolfpack. Can't say to them.
It's interesting how Toulouse approach this, because they could be going back to Toronto for the grand final, and there's potentially a hell of a lot of travel for them in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So how do you pay? Do you go all out and try and win this game, get a week off, and
go back again,
and then go back again, or do you say, look, let's treat it a little bit as reconnaissance for the big game that's coming up in a couple of weeks' time, and we're going to have a bit of fun and enjoy ourselves, but actually it doesn't really matter whether we win or lose. I mean, no places, it doesn't really matter, but it's not a be-all and end-all result. And I suspect that Toronto will want to put down a marker. The danger for them is they may only play one game in 3 weeks and have to then prepare for a grand final. But I think Toronto are geared up for this. Toulouse can trouble them with the tactics that they play, because they're completely unorthodox. They will move the ball from wherever they feel they can. And I think that's a good test for Toronto at this stage. But I think the Wolfpack have just got too much this season, and I think as well they'll use the everybody's against us and we don't care. You know, they might not even let us up even if we win the competition. I think Brian McDermott, Brian Noble will use that as a galvanising factor. They don't want us, therefore we're going to make it difficult for them. So I'm going Toronto by 7.
I'm just hoping that Mr. Wilson gets back from Toronto in time for the show next week. This one's on the telly on Sunday night, 6:30. Toronto. What a fascinating set. Toronto by 12. Saturday afternoon, 3 o'clock. The winners of this will play the losers of that, and the losers of this will go home. It's York versus, both League One games on our League app, according to rugbyleagueandtv.com on Twitter. It's the big one then, York versus Featherstone.
Yeah, there's nothing between these two sides at all, is it? To be honest with you, all season there's been absolutely nothing. I think when they played against each other, I think they've all been separated by a point or two, haven't they? And I don't think.
Well, I think they've played 3 times, haven't they? Featherstone won 2 of them.
And not by many, have they? And you know, and I don't think that'll be. I don't think there'll be any change there in the week as well. To be honest with you, York, a great season consistency-wise. Featherstone, they've been relying on the big game players, won't they, from there? I think this is going to be an absolute belter. I do, both entertainment-wise, enthusiasm-wise, intensity-wise. This could go to Golden Point, and I think it will go to Golden Point. And I think with the maverick of a player, what he is for Featherstone, Dane Chisholm, I think Chisholm could be the winner. I'm going Featherstone by the Golden Point.
Is Mark Campbell going to be in one box and one box in the second?
That's for each answer.
The Mark Campbell derby. I think this is the game of the weekend.
Absolutely.
I'm really, really looking forward to this because of everything that's at stake. And I know there's an elimination game between Warrington and Castleford, but we'll get to that in a minute. I genuinely at the moment don't think either Warrington or Castleford can win the grand final. So this to me has all the ingredients of being one of the great cup ties. I think we quite rightly praised Salford for finishing 3rd. We've mentioned it all season that York finishing 3rd is a magnificent achievement. James Ford is a fabulous coach, got lovely balance in their team. But I thought the way Featherstone played last night against Lee was them saying, we know we've got to be on the road if we're going to win this, but don't rule us out. They've got a great balance in their team. York took a bit of a pasting at Toulouse, but again I think they knew they had that second chance, and I think when you go behind in a cup tie by maybe 2 or 3 scores, there isn't really a lot of point trying to salvage a game that you're not going to. You save something in reserve for the following week. So this will be a different York at home. I just think that it's hard to back against York because of everything they've achieved this year. When they've been put in the pressure situations, they've come up with the goods. That's how they finished 3rd. I think you're right though, this one could go right to the wire. I'm going to go York by 2.
This is going to be a great game, isn't it? 2 teams that are entertaining to watch. Are Featherstone allowed to get more players on duration and lead to a season?
No.
The whole first team. What's Trent Merrin doing in a Featherstone Rovers shirt? What's going on here?
Conrad Hurrell sense.
Ash Hanley improves his try-scoring record. That'd be facetious, aren't they? I'm going to go side with York, but I think this will be a very close game. Hopefully, we know York are good on social media, and hopefully plenty will follow the game at their home ground, and plenty will also make the short trip from Fev to York. But I think York will just have enough on the day, and they'll go for York by 2. We've got some big breaking news coming up, by the way, at the end of the podcast, which is big breaking news for Scully. Thursday, Super League elimination final. Losers go home as the Warrington Wolves take on the Castleford Tigers.
Yeah, well, the Castleford Tigers, if they could have picked anybody for a fixture in the 5, it would have been Warrington. I think Darryl Powell made it 7 weeks ago. He wanted 7 from 7. I think he got 4 from 7, didn't he? But I think he's pretty happy because they're in semi-final mode. And the defeat a couple of weeks ago against St Helens, only by 4 points. It was only because the half-backs were clueless. They got beat last week. Great victory against Hull with what Truman did. But again, it was the same old last week with the half-backs. And certainly Jake Truman. Do you know how many times Jake Truman got caught in the mirror? 6 times.
But there was no outlet
No,
for
no,
him other than you do it, Jake.
No, but this is what I'm saying. But at the end of the day, if I quoted Jake Trump and said, Jake, you don't go anywhere near that, do me? I thought it's not your responsibility. And somebody else will be getting told off. You know, Matt Shane or even who's forward. But anyway, but there was nowhere anywhere near as good the week before. But Castleford have been ready for this one. Warrington Wolves couldn't finish embarrassing season for them. You know, we know certainly that the grand final and Old Trafford is a 1-1, and as we know, we play Costa wouldn't have brought over from there. But I think Castleford will fancy this. I do, and what I saw Warrington last week against Leeds, it was a matter of, oh well, we'll just turn up because, you know, realistically we know we've got a home fixture next week. Castleford in the semi-final mode. I think they'll fancy this, even though Jesse Lafayette and Wright has been suspended. I'm going to cast to turn Warrington over, and I'm going to cast by 10.
I don't think Warrington will play as badly this week as they did last week. My worry with Cass is I can't see points in them. And that was evident against Wigan. That, you know, if you manage to block Truman out, which Wigan successfully did, what is the alternative for Cass? At the moment, there isn't one.
Yeah.
The load isn't being shared enough. If you allow Truman to play, he could beat you on his own. But if your defence suffocates him, I don't know where Castleford's points are coming from. I think the defining factor in this game is being at home. I think that the Warrington fans will turn up and try and recreate the atmosphere they did in the Challenge Cup final. I think Steve Price will sit them down and say, we can play pressure cup tie football.
Yeah.
I think Austin isn't fully fit yet, but every week he plays he gets a little bit nearer. They can't play Matty Smith this week. They're going to have to bring, if he's fit, Declan Patton back. I think that makes the team better balanced, gives them more options. So I'm going to go Warrington by 8.
I'm going to go with the Tigers. Neither team have been great, have they? This is a game which probably no one's really looking forward to watching on Thursday night. Cass fans will be unhappy because they've got to go to work. And we all know Thursday nights, it's impossible to get anywhere. But the fact that Warrington have only won one of their last 9 and it was against Wakefield. No, I'm going to have to go with Castleford. Castleford by 6. Castleford by 6. And finally, Friday night. You get a second bite of the cherry if you lose this one. I'll get there early because the under-19s grand finals on Friday. Saints take on Wigan. But this time it's Wigan versus the Salford Red Devils, the neutrals' favourite team.
Well, you know what? This could be the game of the season because of 2 contrasting teams, isn't it? You know, and we all know what Wigan bring, and we all know, you know, it's still hard to believe. Wigan at the Magic Weekend had been beaten by Warrington, and they were in 9th and going absolutely nowhere. Still all the turmoil. Still coming from the Sean Wendy debacle, the Sean Edwards scenario. Is Adrian Lamb going to stay? When's George Williams going to announce that he's going? You could never believe that Wigan was going to finish second. But once they got it all sorted out, the consistency, what they have shown, and this is the part of the season what they love. Let's not forget as well, I think we do forget now and then, don't we, that they are the holders of this trophy.
Absolutely.
They are the holders of this trophy. But they're playing a Salford Red Devil side who, on the day, can play as well as anybody. The most attractive side, and on the par with St Helens when they want to be, when they're playing attractive rugby league. So this for me is the most interesting fixture of the season so far because of the 2 teams and where they play. Salford can't get into an arm wrestle with Wigan. They cannot say, well, all right, we'll be patient and we'll control the situation because Wigan will just absolutely suffocate from there. So it's going to be an interesting ploy from Ian Watson how Salford Red Devils are going to start straight from the first kick-off against Wigan. I can't split them. Would anybody be saying that? You know, Salford playing the first semi-final. You can't split Salford and Wigan from a point of view. And to be honest with you, I can't split them. Can Salford beat Wigan? Can they beat Wigan? The way Wigan play at the moment, I just can't see it. I just figured Wigan's got enough. Nothing in it though. I'm going Wigan by 7.
I think the one thing that you've highlighted there could be the difference is experience in playoff games.
Yeah.
That this is only Salford's 2nd ever playoff game. was it 13 years they were last in the playoffs under Carl Harris and got heavily beaten in the first round.
Bradford. Yeah.
So they've nothing to draw on. Whereas Wigan are the team that love this time of year, meaningful matches, strangling the life out of the opposition. And the one thing we do know is that the Wigan defence will be magnificent. Because the reason they're second is built on their defence. It's not built on their ability to score a lot of points. Their points difference is 160. Salford's is 186. So that would tell you that perhaps Salford have got more about them.
Yeah.
I would go with you that Wigan are the favourites for this. But there's one thought in the back of my mind, and that is Salford's performance at St Helens earlier in the season.
Yeah.
Where they were 16 down inside about 10 minutes.
12 minutes, yeah.
And then they played the most magnificent rugby to be 30-16 ahead.
Yeah.
They couldn't hold on, which was tribute to St Helens, who we all know are that much ahead of everybody else. I just think if Salford play the way they played that night, they can trouble Wigan. And that the one thing they need to do, like you say, is not get involved in who's got the hardest set of forwards, but get 12 points up early on. Quieten the DW Stadium and see how Wigan react to that, because I'm not sure Wigan have got too many players in their team that can score a lot of points. I think George Williams can, Oliver Gildart can, but when you're maybe 2 scores behind, it's a different dynamic. You start to force the ball a little bit. I've just got a very sneaky feeling that because they've got nothing to lose, they know they've got a second chance.
Yeah.
Salford might win this, and they might win it by 2.
Good call, it's a good call.
I want it to be exciting and close, don't we? I'm going to side with Wigan, but that's not to say that I think Salford can win, because this is a genuine toss of the coin fixture. But Wigan's form towards the end of the season, the fact they're at home doesn't really change much for me. They were very good against Castleford last week. I know Salford are playing better than Castleford. Wigan by 4. I think they're all going to be very good games. Well, that's going to be a very good game. Castleford probably won't be. Not some good news for Scully, because the BBC, you've heard of them, they have announced they're going to switch off, this is on the BBC website, the BBC is to switch off the news and sport text services on the TV red button early next year. The decision spells the end of reading headlines, football scores, weather, travel news and more on TV sets 45 years after the launch of CFAX. From early 2020, a BBC spokesperson said, viewers will no longer be able to access text-based BBC News and BBC Sport content by pressing red.
Devastated.
How are you going to find information?
Start a campaign.
Have you had any more tissues? Oh.
It's a good job we're coming to an end now, guys.
CFAX is ending. Oh no. Oh no.
It's the end of CFAX.
What am I going to do?
Right.
How are you going to be up to date?
When I wake up early in the morning at 1:30, 2 o'clock, what are we going to be looking at?
BBC News 24 apparently. The place to go to. We'll be back on
Unlike
Monday.
CFAX,
Hopefully I'll be better next week.
Yeah. Blame the government, it's their fault.
I think you've done really well to stay out 2 hours in the condition that you're in.
Hi everyone over in the UK. Well, I'm here to tell you that come October this year, I'll be travelling to the UK to do a week-long talking tour. I'll be talking about everything in my life, my rugby league career, how I started and of course how I finished this year. I'll be travelling to Leeds, St Helens, Hull and Doncaster to do live events. Go to rmsportsevents.co.uk to get all the information. I'll also be playing a couple of games of rugby league against an old foe of mine, Adrian Morley. The events also support Life for a Kid. Can't wait for it, it's going to be great fun. I love the UK. See you in October.